Welcome back, capsulers. If you've been in cryosleep for, say, the last decade, waking up to EVE Online today probably feels like you've been dropped into a completely foreign universe. I'm here to give you a highly structured, comprehensive explainer on absolutely everything you missed. We're going to decode the patches, the politics, and the massive fundamental shifts so you can catch up easily and, undock with actual confidence.
Get this, 1,104. That is the staggering number of dated deployments EVE has seen since 2012. Think about that for a second. That means the universe you once knew hasn't just been tweaked a little bit, it's been entirely rebuilt while you were offline. Old mechanics have been totally scrapped, the economy was intentionally starved at one point, and the physical map itself was essentially handed over to the players. So here's our roadmap for it today. We'll be looking at the shape of New Eden, who owns the map, playing, paying, and free-to-play, failed spin-offs and scarcity, and finally, new players and new independence.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the shape of New Eden.
EVE's development rhythm has seen some pretty massive peaks and valleys over the last 14 years. You probably remember the old model, right, where we just got 2 massive named expansions a year. Well, that collapsed around 2014. It shifted into the super dense period of continuous monthly drops, went through a heavily themed phase they called quadrants, and now, here in the 2020s, that classic curated expansion model has finally been restored, running alongside constant logs of deployments. Depending on exactly when you left the game, you missed distinct eras of survival. For instance, if you logged off during the 10 releases a year era, with mythological names like Kronos and Phoebe, you missed the massive shift to free-to-play in Era 3, the deep scarcity of Era 5, and the modern restored expansions we're actually enjoying today in Era 6. Moving on to Section 2, who owns the map?
The fundamental rules of the universe completely changed regarding who actually owns and controls New Eden. The crucial point here is this single, longest arc in the game's record, the massive transfer of infrastructure. Back in the day, you lived out of unkillable NPC stations and static player starbases. Yeah, that is completely gone. Starting with personal deployables back in 2013, moving to completely destructible, player-owned Upwell citadels in 2016, and now extending to orbital skyhooks and sovereignty hubs in 2024. Everything you rely on out in space is now player-built, individually owned, and most importantly, it's entirely destructible and lootable.
And hey, if you haven't logged in since before November 2014, definitely remember this. Unlimited jump projection is dead. The infamous Phoebe release introduced jump fatigue and jump range caps. You absolutely cannot sino a massive capital fleet across the entire map in 10 minutes anymore. Territory is profoundly local now. It has to be defended by the people who actually live there, because you simply cannot teleport the whole alliance in instantly.
Okay, Section 3, playing, paying, and free-to-play.
How EVE charges you to exist has fundamentally and permanently transformed. 12 years of EVE strictly being a mandatory subscription game officially ended in 2016 with the Ascension expansion. It created this hybrid funnel. The old full-access subscription you remember, that's now called an Omega clone. But anyone can play for free, permanently, as an Alpha clone, albeit with a restricted skill list and slower training. Honestly, it was the single largest change to the game's accessibility, turning the free tier into a massive funnel for new blood rather than just some timed demo.
There's been a steady, highly deliberate decoupling of playing from paying. Just look at the progression. We went from multiple character training to cosmetic ship skins. Then, wildly, skill trading in 2016 actually turned your hard-earned skill points into a tradable commodity on the market. More recently, they've added the Hypernet Relay, which is basically an in-game lottery system, and a massive ship customization system called Skinnerd. What your money can actually buy in-game has vastly widened over the years.
Let's move to Section 4, failed spin-offs and scarcity. Progress always comes with a massive cost. Remember calling in orbital strikes for mercenaries on the ground? The cross-platform PlayStation shooter Dust 514 achieved amazing integration in 2013, but its servers closed by 2016. In the patch notes, you literally see it tragically unwound piece by piece. Chat channels deleted, factional warfare bonuses removed. The exact same fate met the developers' massive, expensive foray into virtual reality. It was entirely abandoned by 2017 as they cut their losses and refocused on their core universe.
And if you remember the glory days of endless, abundant capitals and supercarriers roaming absolutely everywhere, yeah, those are gone too. Welcome to the scarcity era. From 2020 to 2021, the developers initiated this huge ecosystem rebalance that deliberately slashed the universe's mineral supply, rewrote all industry inputs, and massively nerfed capital mining ships like the Rorqual. It drastically contracted EVE's overall economy, making ships inherently more valuable. To this day, it remains one of the most heavily contested periods in the game's history.
Finally, Section 5, New Players and New Independence. Fast-forwarding directly to the present day in 2026, there's been a massive shift in how the game actually welcomes rookies. For over 2 decades, the developers proudly insisted they would never create a safe zone. EVE was supposed to be harsh, cold, and unforgiving from minute one. Well, things change. The 2026 Cradle of War expansion introduced Exordium. It's a 53-system walled garden starter region, locked at a 1.0 security class. PvP is mechanically impossible here. War declarations are totally disabled. Payouts are cut by 20% to push you out eventually, sure, but for the very first time, EVE actually has a protected space to safely onboard new pilots.
Behind the scenes, the studio itself went on a pretty wild corporate ride. Back in 2018, CCP was acquired by Pearl Abyss, the makers of Black Desert Online, for roughly $225 million. But after some financial losses, Pearl Abyss put them up for sale in 2025. Then, amazingly, just a few months ago, in May 2026, CEO Hilmar Vegar Pettersson led a $120 million management buyout. The studio successfully bought itself back, becoming completely independent once again, and officially rebranding as Fenris Creations. Now, the company might be called Fenris Creations today, but the directive from the top remains steadfastly focused. As CEO Hilmar stated directly to the community, what does this mean for EVE? The answer is also simple. EVE continues. Despite all the chaos, the ownership changes, and the massive mechanical overhauls, their focus is entirely on keeping New Eden alive and thriving for decades to come. So, returning Capsuleers, we've covered the roadmap, 14 years, 1,104 deployments, the absolute death of unlimited force projection, destructible player-owned space stations, and an entirely new economy. The universe has fundamentally changed. The rules are drastically different, and let's face it, your old assets might literally be locked in an abandoned, decaying citadel right now. But the core thrill of New Eden remains exactly the same. Armed with everything we just covered in this explainer, what are you waiting for? Are you ready to undock again?